Hey everyone, it's Acoustic Stevo, the human patriot, coming to you from the universe. Join me on my journey. Let's have some fun. Welcome to 12th House Astrology. Today I'm going to tell you why I use the equal house system when I do my astrology. I started using the Placidus system, which is the most common system used nowadays by most modern astrologers. However, there are other house systems that have been used and used for longer in history than Placidus has even been around. And the first one that was used was called the equal house system. And what they used to do was find out your rising sign. Then they would just take that sign and put it in your first house. And then all the other houses would fall right in line with that, starting at the beginning of each sign that, proceeded after your rising sign to fill all your houses. That was a really easy way to go about doing it, but it didn't really lend to a lot of nuances. And I'm going to pull up my Placidus horoscope right now because I want to show you what it looks like. Like if you were to go on this website, astro.com, and get a free natal chart, and you put in all your information, you would get something that would look like this, but it would be your particular natal chart. As you can see, there are 12 houses. And if you look in the middle of this screen, you'll see the houses are numbered 1 to 12. Each house, if you look at this, is a little bit different size. And the reason for that is in the Placidus system, it goes based upon where you are born and where the sun travels throughout basically that time of year throughout a day. So basically the sun travels all the way around the earth and goes through all 12 signs every single day. And this is what your day, or my day in this instance, looks like when that happens. So, if you look, there are some things that are kind of odd, right? Let's just look at my 12th house, for instance. It is like right in the middle of Scorpio, and it's just like a little, takes up about a little over a third of, maybe about half of the entire sign. So it's the entire 12th house is in Scorpio, but it doesn't start, until a few degrees into Scorpio, and it ends, a few degrees away from being at the end of Scorpio. So the entire house is inside Scorpio. And if you look down at my second house, down here, you'll see that it's got 3 signs in it. It starts in Sagittarius. That's the one with the little arrow. It holds all of Capricorn in it. And then it ends at the very beginning of Aquarius. So it's got 3 signs in it. As well as if you look over here at my 8th house, it's another one that's got 3 signs in it. That's the one with the moon in it. That's the 8th house. And it starts in Gemini. Has all of Cancer in it. And a little sliver of Leo towards the end of the house. You look again down here at my 6th house. That's the one that is entirely inside Taurus the bull, just like the 12th house was entirely inside Scorpio. So this is the type of thing that occurs in Placidus. And I never questioned it, for years and years and years. And finally I was kind of looking a little bit deeper into astrology, and I learned what these things were called. They're called intercepts. And so I was learning about them and what they meant. Well, while learning about it, I started to hear about other house systems, whole house being the first, and then I learned about equal house. Whole house doesn't really work for me, and I'm going to show you why. It's the most ancient, and it's the one that's been used for the longest. Not a lot of people still use it, but I'm going to show you. If I go back to my chart selections, that's the cool thing about this site, is you can look at your natal information in whatever type of configuration you want. So you just go right here where it says web default style for the chart drawing style, well, it defaults to Placidus because that's what most modern astrologers use. But if you go, you can look at all these different choices, right? That's actually, let me get out of that. Here we go. Down at house system. That was actually the wrong area. I apologize. This defaults, right, to Placidus. If I click on it, Placidus is the first one in there. But it has a bunch of different ones. I'm going to show you whole sign first. This is the most ancient one, all right? So I'll click here to show you my chart in whole sign. Now you saw I had all those planets in Scorpio, right? But now look where Scorpio is. It takes up my entire first house because my rising sign is in Scorpio. But when that happens, all these planets now are in my first house. And that just doesn't ring true for my personality. You can really kind of get the themes out of any type of astrology to make it functional. But as far as how I interact with the world, the first house is very important to that, right? And in this system, it would show that I would have a ton of energy in my first house. I mean, I'd constantly be interacting with the world with all these planets in the first house. I'd be a very strong personality. I'm not saying I'm not a strong personality, but if this were my configuration, I would be a very strong personality. So it just doesn't seem to fit, right? It just doesn't seem to fit me. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the one that I use, which is the equal house system. And I'm going to tell you why after I pull it up and show you what it looks like. So we're going to go to equal. We're going to click here to show it. And now all the houses are the same size, okay? They all start at the same degree in a different sign. So my ascendant's at 23 degrees, 23.16 or whatever, of Scorpio. Well, the next one, if you look at house 2, it would start at 2316 Sagittarius. Then my third house would start at 2316 Capricorn, so on and so forth, to complete all the way around. It's symmetrical. All right, that's the first thing that appeals to me, because there's this thing called sacred geometry, right? And just the human being in general, the shape of most planets, if not all planets, they all are these globes, these circles. And I think that our astrological wheel is also a circle. Time is a circle. Clocks, things are symmetric. A clock, if you look at it, it's set up to have 12 houses or 12 hours, right? And it's symmetrical. Well, I believe so are we. And the reason why I've chose to go to this system is not only does it look and feel better just intuitively from it being symmetrical, but it makes sense to me in the cosmos, and I'll tell you why. Because on Earth, we have a season, right? We have 4 seasons, but we have a cycle that reoccurs, and every single sign has the same amount of degrees in it as you go around the year. It's not like the planets, not planets, but it's not like our symbology, gives more credence to one sign for longer than another as you go around the 12, right? So there's just a number of reasons why this just intuitively feels right with it being symmetrical like this. It's very easy to draw a horoscope if you know. I wouldn't even need this visual representation. If I knew somebody's ascendant, I know where every single house starts. All right. So as an astrologer, it makes it a lot easier as well. And then, there are these books that you can get. They're called ephemerises, and they list where the planets are every single day. And they have basically they basically have every single planet broken up by the hour. I think it goes usually by 1 or 2 hour chunks, and it has everything. So if you can pinpoint somebody's placements, you can draw up natal horoscope, you don't need a computer program. You just find their ascendant, you find where all their planets are, you put them where they are in the houses. Bingo, you're on your way to rock and roll and do some astrology. Okay, so it's a very easy system to use. And my next point on why I use this is because when I look at it, it makes more sense to my personality. And I'll point out a few things before I go back to the default one that most people use, which is Placidus. I'm going to point out a few things, and we'll go back over there, and you'll see how it kind of changes between the two. And if you've known me for a little while, or even over YouTube know me, you might be able to see some of these things. All right? So, for instance, if you look at my first house here, compared to the whole sign system that I showed you, not really compared to the Placidus, because this is a very similar to the Placidus. They're not much off. And my first house is not really off much as far as what planets are in it and things like that. So if you look at my first house, I've got Neptune and Sagittarius in my first house. All right. So what that means is my generation, the outer planets, Neptune being one, kind of have a sway over a generation while they're being born, because they stay, being so far out in the heavens, they stay in a particular sign for a lot longer. They're called slow-moving planets. And so a whole generation can be born while one planet is in a particular sign. Well, what this means is my generation that was born with Sagittarius having Neptune in it, that is very important to me as an individual because it's in my first house, right? And it's Neptune, which is the ruler of Pisces. It's the co-ruler of Pisces along with Jupiter. So what that means is that, and Sagittarius is kind of like the philosopher sign. It's like the teacher. It's a lot about wisdom. It's also ruled by Jupiter. You know, it's the other sign that has Jupiter as a ruler, and it's only ruled by Jupiter. So what this means is me having Neptune here in my first house in Sagittarius. I have got this quality to my being where I'm a little bit far out. I'll just leave it at that, all right? And that is definitely more apparent, if you know me, than all this energy from all these signs that are stuck in my 12th house. Like, if all this energy of all these signs that are in Scorpio were in my first house, I wouldn't be as mellow as I am, right? they'd be in Scorpio first off, so I would be a totally different flavor of a person than I am. I'll just leave it at that for now. So now I'm going to point out something that changes between Placidus and my equal house that I use. And let's just look where my sun is. My sun in this equal house system is in my 12th house, okay? And Placidus, it's in my 11th house because I was born towards the end of Libra there. If you could see it, it's right about to go into Scorpio. It's a few degrees off. It's what's called a cusp. I'm at the beginning of the cusp. So I am a Libra, definitely, but I have got some Scorpio flavor, especially with all the planets I have in Scorpio, and my rising sign also being in Scorpio, and my moon being in my 8th house. There's a lot of reasons why, as a Libra, I have a lot of scorpionic energy as well. But that being said, and if you look at it, I also have Pluto in Libra, so I'm definitely mixing the Venus-Mars energy. I also have my Mars and Venus are only a degree apart in Scorpio. So I definitely mix the Mars-Venus energy. As a man, I have a very well-developed feminine side. Not as far as like effeminate, but as far as like understanding masculine and feminine energy. I understand the feminine energy very well. I am definitely a masculine being, but I'm also highly attuned with feminine qualities of, being a receptive person, because that's really what femininity is about. So, if you see, my sun here is in the 12th house. That definitely aligns more to my personality than if it was in the 11th house in Libra. And let me explain why. I've always been somebody that could kind of be obscure and in the background, right? Yes, I have a lot of friends and a lot of social energy, but I'm never put at the forefront of social circles. I'm always kind of in the background. And if I had my sun in the 11th house, I would definitely be more in the forefront, all right? So that's one of the reasons why this rings a lot more true than the Placidus. Um, the other is the 12th house rules spirituality and ascension spirituality. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's like the end of evolution of a soul, right? And in my astrology, if the sun were in the 11th house, that would mean that my manifestation, because the sun is really the most important planet in your horoscope, that would mean my energy was a lot more attuned with social media, for one. Like, social media would be a breeze for me. Most Aquariuses or 11th house people can attest to this, but it's not. I struggle really badly with my social media, even though I put a lot of energy into it. And the reason why is because the universe naturally obscures me, right? It naturally wants to put me out of sight and even out of mind of most people. I'm not meant to be seen in a certain way by a lot of people. That doesn't mean that I can't have success with my social presence. It just means there's this natural obscuring energy, and that can actually be to my benefit in the long run. But in the short run, it certainly is not. Okay? And if my sun was in the 11th house, I would probably be benefiting a lot more from my social presence than I am. So that's another indication that it really does belong in the 12th house. Just also how pretty much my entire life is devoted to spirituality. That pretty much puts me in the 12th house with my sun, like right away. Um, I'm also going to show you here. If you look at my Saturn, okay? Actually, that's the most apparent thing. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to spend too long on this. I'm going to switch back over, though, and show you Placidus again. And, before I do that, I'm going to do a quick run-through of my planets and what house they're in right now. So I've got my Sun, Mercury, Uranus, Mars, and Venus all in my 12th house, all in Scorpio, except for my Sun, which is in Libra, almost in Scorpio. My ascendant sign is Scorpio, 23 degrees. I then have Neptune in my first house in Sagittarius. Then I don't have planets until I get to Chiron, which is in Taurus, in my 6th house of work and routine in every day. So that's Chiron's the wounded healer. So that in my life that would represent work, and it also is the house of health. So I have an autoimmune disease, and that would definitely align with the wounded healer being in Taurus, which is a very physical earth sign and has to do with the body actually. Being in the 6th house and being the wounded healer, I am definitely in tune with that energy. Then my moon is in Cancer, which is the ruler of the moon, in the 8th house. This lends me to heightened psychic abilities. I'm able to see beyond the curtain. I'm able to talk about what's beyond the curtain because my 8th house starts in Gemini, which is the sign of communication. So this is a very strong placement for a spiritual person, such as myself. Then we go into Jupiter, and it's in its natural house, in the 9th house, which is the teaching house. So I'm also aligned to be a teacher, and it's in Leo, which is the sun energy, which means that I could possibly shine as a teacher. Um, Now, I have a lot of, like, the planets, they all interact together, and they can conflict with each other and things. And I do have a lot of conflicting energy in my chart, a lot of things I have to work through to get the optimum effects of these planets. And believe me, I work through them all the time. I'm going to be working through them for a while. But the actual thing that's being set up by my natal chart is definitely more aligned looking at it like this in this equal house system with actually who I am. Then I have Saturn conjunct my midhaven, which is where basically I have your midhaven is like basically your pinnacle of your career. It's like where everything aligns for you in your status, right? It's like the beginning of your 10th house, which is all about status and career, and it's ruled by Capricorn. So I have Saturn in its natural house here in the 10th house. Right up conjunct is what they call it when they pretty much are almost touching with my midhaven, but it's a little bit behind the midhaven. So I constantly struggle with my status and being taken seriously, getting promotions, things like this. They do happen for me because I stay in line with morality and I work hard, but it just takes a little bit extra for me to achieve things. And that's okay. You know, it's definitely okay. So I'm going to go into my 11th house here, and my north node, which is your soul progress, is in Virgo in the 11th house, which means, you know, I was talking about the 11th house and if my sun actually shone there, how I would have more energy towards social media and like social interactions in general, just kind of being a social butterfly, right? Well, this is like your north node is where you have not developed your soul. And it's where you're supposed to work on developing your soul in this life. So Virgo is the sign of like work, health, being organized, having routines. These are things I'm not good at, right? These are the things that I'm learning in this life. And it's in the social media house. So the more I learn to have routine and to be more organized, the more people are actually going to want to watch what I'm doing. I have somebody approaching my vehicle right now, so let me deal with that. I'll be right back. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
The moment I cross the line, it starts getting bad.
Oh, man,
There's
I know.
about 5 or 6, not big trucks, just cars all over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were like telling me that I might bring an empty back. I said, I'll just wait on that one. I don't want to drive with an empty. All right, thanks. So basically, let me get back into this. I have my north node in my 11th house, which means that's going to be something I need to work towards, getting better at organization and being social and doing it in a more organized, strategic way and sticking to it. That's tough for me, let me tell you. And there's a reason why it's a north node. It's definitely my weakness, all right? And then because I like to just throw things out there, you know? Because my strong point is the opposite of that, which is Pisces in my 5th house, which is just like shine and be crazy, you know? That's what I have done. That's how I have developed my soul, but it's not time for that anymore. I don't need to develop that anymore. I need to develop organizational type things. So the more I do that, the more in line I will become with the universe, and the more blessings and the better I can actually serve humanity. So it's a good reason to do it. So I'm gonna. All right, so Pluto, I also have it here, which is transformative, right? And it's in Libra in my own sign, and it's a generational planet. So that means basically I have the potential to transform humanity, because the 11th house is the house of humanitarianism and your connection to the human race. So, and it being in the sign of Libra, which is a sign of cooperation with others, partnerships, it means that I have the potential to transform through my partnerships. So it's kind of a cool placement. Now, I just gave you a quick run through of my actual horoscope. Now, this fits me in the equal house system. When I go back to Placidus, which I had ran on for years, I mean, it's going to be very close, all right? It's not going to have a ton of differences. But the thing about it is, let me grab it real quick. It's not going to really give as accurate of a picture, in my opinion, all right? And this kind of is opinion because there's so many different ways that astrologers work with astrology, and this just happens to be mine. But and it is highly personal as to why I've chose the equal house system over this Placidus system, because here you see, as I told you, my sun is in the 11th house. No longer is Saturn in my 10th house. It's at the very end of my 9th house. All right. So also, really, as far as planets moving houses, that's really the only thing that's different. A lot of the planets are in different areas of the house, but actually moving houses, it's just my sun and Saturn. Everything else stays in the house that it was in both configurations. But that's enough. That's enough for me to understand. And even with the Saturn thing, right here, it shows you more on my midhaven. You can see that's the MC. It's like right coming. It's not in the 10th house, right? And I know Saturn's in my 10th house. It does have some 9th house energy. For instance, higher education is ruled by the 9th house, and I have had major delays in my higher education. But you know what? I've started educating myself instead of spending money on it, and I'm very happy with the results. So that's probably what I'll do, unless I have a very good reason to go get more higher education. I'm not sure I will. But it being in my 10th house makes more sense. It means that I have... Saturn is the planet of, like, restrictions. It means that I have restrictions on my career, that, I'm going to have to fight and progress and go back down the stairs, up the stairs like the goat, right? It's not going to be easy for me, and that's okay. That's going to be a good thing for me, so it's meant to be for a reason. So I really just kind of wanted to give you a idea of maybe another way to look at your astrology, which is change the house systems. Look at it in all three configurations. The ancient one, whole house, the one I use, equal house, and the default Placidus. And there's a ton more. I haven't even really gotten into understanding what most of those are, because once I found equal house, I was like sold, so to speak. So just go ahead and check some stuff out, see what you like. But that's going to be it for this video. All right. I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and I hope to see you here again on 12th House Astrology. Thanks for stopping by.